Benjamin Netanyahu has held 5 meetings of his war cabinet since the assault to weigh up how his forces will respond. Well, joining us is political analyst Professor Joe Siracusa. Joe, great to speak with you again here on Power Hour. How do you expect Israel will respond?
Good morning. Well, look, Israel will retaliate. It should retaliate. The only question remains how it's going to retaliate. Now, it has a number of options. Some of them are quite dramatic. It can go after Iran's nuclear facilities, or it's where it's doing all the research, et cetera. Or it could go after the factories that built those cruise missiles and those rockets, or it can go over the staging area and go at the staging areas in western Iran where they were launched. Now, that's one of the things they can do. What they really should do, and what a lot of smart people are saying, I mean, the smart money says that Israel should turn to its cybersecurity measures. That is, Israel, through cybersecurity measures, can bring the Iranian military, economic, or the civilian section and the economic section to a halt. We don't know much about it. We know it's very powerful. Of course, it's been classified for years and years, but they can do enormous damage to Iran. And keep in mind this, Gabriella, when Iran should be waiting for this attack, the Ayatollah has come down. He's doubled down on women not wearing the hijab. So we see all these pictures from Iran of these women being raced into police vans and things like that. I mean, it's really bizarre. I mean, it's kind of Mad Hatters running the show over there. Now, average Persians don't want to see Israeli bombers overhead or fighter planes. This quarrel here is with the Revolutionary Guard and with the mullahs and the theocracy at the top. So, and Israel has turned the narrative around, or at least the attack on them has turned the narrative around. People aren't talking about what's going on in Gaza exactly, but they are talking about Israelis' ability to hit back, or whether it has the right to hit back. And of course, it does. I mean, those 350 or so missiles and cruise missiles and the rest of it, they carried about a half a ton of TNT, which could have done great damage. Now, I know the Israelis, the Iranians are saying that they were all intended to be intercepted. That's ridiculous. They could have never have known that. And the Israelis said they got them all, which isn't exactly right, too. I'm sure a number of them have hit in certain places, and we're not hearing too much about it. But the potential damage there, if some of those got through, would have been enormous. There'd be thousands of Israelis who would be dead and injured. So the Israelis cannot let this one go by. And of course, Netanyahu here has the lifeline he's been looking for. He's been able to turn the narrative around. He's now able to maybe unite his cabinet even more than he has in the past. And he wants to be seen as the savior of his country. I mean, only 15% of Israelis support him publicly or politically. On the other hand, all 100% of him want to see him finish this war with Gaza and with Iran. So there's kind of a mixed attitude towards this guy. But look, this is now or never for Netanyahu. Now or never. And of course, the United States is sitting back saying it wants nothing to do with the offensive part of it, which of course is only a half-truth. Because if Israel goes on the offensive, the United States has pledged to support them on the rebound. So, that doesn't make much sense, as a matter of fact. So it's the big story. I mean, it's going to deal with economies and shipping and all kinds of calculations in the Middle East. And so it's a big story, and it's worth watching.
I want to speak to you about America's place in this. Joe Biden warned Iran not to attack Israel, and it did. Are we seeing countries around the world ignore Joe Biden?
Countries around the world have consistently ignored Biden. I mean, Sky had great coverage the day that the American exit from Kabul. House and the State Department took over personally. It was a disaster, leaving that Air Force base to try to remove those people at that point. And it was quite clear that American policy kills lives over there, and you can't trust them. And then, of course, we've got in Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine's always been on a losing hand here. It was never going to win a war against nation with 11 time zones. And so now Ukraine's going down the tubes. Everybody knows it. The only reason the Americans are trying to get a lot of money to Ukraine right now is so they could avoid the campaign debate about who lost Ukraine. That's all that's really at stake right now, because Ukraine is going to need an exit to get out of this war. What we need is diplomacy there. And of course, in the matter of Gaza, the Israelis have consistently, that is Netanyahu, has consistently ignored Biden's comments. He's ignored all the visits of the Secretary of State, Tony Blinken, and everybody else. I mean, the Israelis are tone deaf when it comes to Joe Biden. I mean, Joe Biden just does not have that kind of clout or cachet that goes with the American presidency. And so, we got people around the world who are looking at this very carefully and saying, well, maybe America's word doesn't count so much anymore. And as far as the Israelis are concerned, I've been following Israel for over 50 years since I was a young student. They are in a category by themselves. They're an outlier. They do their own thing, then they explain it later on. They know they have the support of the American people. They got all the Christian evangelicals on their side, and they got a lot of politicians on their side through very clever lobbying, et cetera. And so Israel can no wrong as far as the American professional elite is concerned. There's the politicians. The average American, of course, particularly the left wing of the Democratic Party, is furious. Tens of thousands of people on the street complaining about Joe Biden and about Netanyahu. But during the worst parts of the 1980s, which opposed Ronald Reagan's military buildup, millions of people came out. Didn't stop the buildup. It just let off a lot of steam. But I'll tell you what, these people in the Democratic Party who are now taking a very dim view of Joe Biden for his failure to bring Netanyahu into line will make him pay for this in the November election, because there is nothing that Biden can do right now to correct, to right the wrong. As far as they're concerned, he is responsible for the death of tens of thousands of women and children and probably 100,000 casualties. So they ain't going to let him off the hook.
Well, you say that Joe Biden has no clout. I don't see that changing anytime soon. Looking at US politics, former US President Donald Trump has claimed that his criminal hush money trial in New York is having a reverse effect. Now, Donald Trump made the claim while in Manhattan, where he vowed to work with the Democrat mayor and governor to save the city if he's re-elected to the White House. Joe, can you bring us up to speed on the criminal trial and how it's impacting Donald Trump's popularity?
Well, his popularity is about the same with his with the base in his party. This trial has been on the cards since 2016. We learned then that he had an affair with an adult actress, whatever that means exactly, or maybe he didn't. Who knows what goes on behind closed doors? Who cares, really? But he was paid. He paid her $130,000 to remain silent about what went on, and he used Michael Cohen, who was his lawyer and fixer, to take care of this. And of course, Cohen went to prison for doing these kinds of things. He lied under oath. He's going to be the chief witness in the next couple of days anyway, for the prosecution. And so the president is charged with 38 counts of felony for cooking the books. That is how he paid her off. And so we all know that. But, even if he's convicted, all he's going to do is get a probationary period. But, Gabriella, the big thing here is what's in the background here. The sort of the factor that newspapers and we don't talk about is if his wife gives up on him. Now, Melania, of course, had just had Barron, et cetera, when all this nonsense was going on. And Michael Cohen says he lied to Melania about the president having an affair or whatever it is. And, if she quits on him, or if she gives up on him, or she's too embarrassed to stand next to him, his campaign will fall apart. I mean, Americans can
But I don't see that happening anytime soon. There are no indications that Melania is going to be abandoning Donald Trump.
Well, I tell you what, if she has to give testimony, and she may be called, and there's a threat that her son Barron will have to give testimony, and if they relive all this Hollywood access tapes, look, there's only so much a partner can take. She just had the baby. He's having an affair. He can't pull tell you what, if she embarrasses him publicly, she will probably cause him a great deal of harm. Now, Americans can put up with a lot of things, but they'll never put up with a wife leaving her husband while he's running for office.
Yeah, well, I don't see that happening anytime soon. We have been seeing her a little bit more out on the campaign trail, but I think you're right. I think if she was to walk away from Donald Trump, then his popularity would plummet. Let's get your thoughts on Julian Assange and the latest developments there. His attempt to evade extradition to the US has suffered a setback as US lawyers provided the assurances about his treatment a London court had requested. He, of course, faces multiple criminal charges in the US relating to the publication of classified information on the WikiLeaks website that he founded. Joe, what's your assessment of the latest developments with Julian Assange?
Well, I think he's going to be able to get out of this because the Australian government has come to life. There was, I think, a joint resolution in February to ask Biden to drop the case against Assange. Assange has, of course, been his own worst enemy. He's been Belmarsh prison for 5 years. 7 years before that, he was stuck in the Ecuadorian embassy, which was just a small apartment in London. Kind of go nuts in a place like that. And the Americans want this guy very badly. Hillary wanted him, and these indictments came under the Trump administration after they were. We found that out after they were unveiled, as a matter of fact. And I think Julian Assange has suffered enough, mainly because he is a journalist. He's a rough journalist. He's an information vigilante. And I think the reason they don't want to see him on trial, the Americans are really smart, is because he has proof. I mean, his stuff that he got from the Pentagon and other places shows American war crimes. That is Apache helicopters gunning down Reuters correspondents while conducting interviews. I mean, I don't think the Biden administration wants to see a trial where Julian's lawyers, all these top First Amendment people, pointing out that he pointed out war crimes. And of course, during my early days at university, Daniel Ellsberg did the same thing about Vietnam. That is, he pointed out the hypocrisy or what was going on in the White House, and he became a lion or a hero. This guy, of course, has become a scapegoat. So I think there's no more political advantage to keeping Assange behind bars. I mean, his health must have suffered terribly, and I think he will come back to Australia. And I think he's probably served enough. And of course, if you're going to jail Assange, then you got to jail the people at The Guardian and the New York Times who published his material. I mean, you can't say that the information he's passing on is journalism, whereas he himself is then charged with the Espionage Act, which is this creaky thing from the First World War, and where they're going to try to get him on treason and things like that. It just doesn't play. So the Assange got caught in the crosshairs of this political war in America. And, to tell you, and I got to meet Assange on a screen once upon a time. I just think he just got in over his head, and, he forgot that he was a journalist. And for a minute there, Gabriella, he became a rock star. And as soon as a journalist is a rock star, they're gone. I mean, they're just exposed to all kinds of weaknesses and problems. So Julian Assange, I think, should be let off the hook because there's no more advantage to torturing this guy. And if the Americans said the death penalty's off the table, who cares? 75 years in a maximum security prison in Marion, Illinois is worse than death, as far as I'm concerned. It's a small room. He only gets out of his cell 1 hour a day. I mean, who the hell wants to live like that? And I think Assange has suffered enough.
Professor Joseph Siracusa, thank you so much for joining us on Power Hour. Always appreciate getting your insights and analysis. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.